Oh, where did she go?
Hi everyone, and welcome to this open mic event. We provide a platform, you provide a voice, Disrupt Innovation Festival, and this evening I believe we've just got Michelle back. So we've got Michelle and Angela from Near Me talking about the development of peer-to-peer commerce. In a minute I'm going to hand over to Angela and Michelle, but just so you know, you can submit questions both via the Google function, which you'll see on your screen, and also by using the ThinkDiff Twitter hashtag, which I'll be monitoring. So that's ThinkDiff with one F. This should be a great session. So, Angela, I believe you're going to introduce Michelle. I'm going to hand over to you guys.
Great. Thanks so much, Seb. Hi, everybody. My name is Angela Baldwin, and I'm here with Near Me. I have Michelle Regner here. She is the CEO and co-founder of Near Me, which is a peer-to-peer commerce solution that's enabling brands all over the world to build their own marketplace. Just a little bit about her. She sold her first software as a service company, Inner Circuit, years ago, and later founded Desk Near Me, a marketplace connecting mobile workers to with available desks all over the world. So in 2014, she actually launched Near Me, and it's considered a peer-to-peer marketplace in a box. We're working with global brands like Cisco Systems, talking with Intel and various other brands and growing. And it's really, really exciting to see what Michelle's doing with Near Me. Just so you all know, she's been chosen as The Economist Intelligence Unit's 25 social business leaders, and she recently spoke at the Share Conference in San Francisco and also the Startup Marketing Conference. And if you're in Dublin next week, she'll be there for the Web Summit. So say hello, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to meet you all virtually, and we're excited to be a part of the webinar today. Thanks,
Great. And
Angela.
so, yeah, definitely. And we're definitely speaking live out of San Francisco. So this is our office there you can see with Michelle. And so we're really excited to be connecting with all of you wherever you are. So make sure you say hello at Near Me Co on Twitter as well as through the hashtag ThinkDIF. And so we're excited to get started.
Great.
So Michelle, I want to go ahead and just get started with a very basic question. What is peer-to-peer commerce?
Well, for us, peer-to-peer commerce is, we've seen traditional e-commerce, and we've seen platforms transform industries like e-commerce and CRM and content management. And so for us, peer-to-peer commerce is the interaction of empowering peers to get things from each other that they would like to rent, share, swap, buy, sell, and we've seen this traditionally on places like Craigslist, eBay, and really those have been an early catalyst for this new industry, the sharing economy, and for us, the sharing economy, as a lot of folks are starting to read about it in mainstream media now, is really a movement. It's a movement towards a new way of using underutilized assets and what people do with those, and gaining access to things that they wouldn't have otherwise had access to. So that can range from boats to cars to luxury homes, airplanes, winemaking equipment. There's a massive list of things from what we hear. So peer-to-peer is just that interaction amongst many-to-many versus traditional e-commerce of one-to-many.
Okay, so based on what you've seen in our economy or in commerce right now, why does that matter? Why is peer-to-peer hot? What's going on in that scene?
Yeah, there's just been a different shift in, I think, the millennial generation, but more importantly, there have been some interest in Catalyst on how people can get access to things that they want that they don't have to actually purchase. So we've seen some out of the recession, we've seen Airbnb really take off in that folks did it from a monetary value of renting out their home to pay their mortgage, or even just a cheaper way to travel. And so it's become valuable because of the demand of the public to be able to do these things or access these things that the internet has allowed for, and connect to these people that we wouldn't have otherwise known. So while we may have just connected on folks via social media or our neighbors, this gives us access to a new way of interacting with others and sharing those things that that we might want, short-term or long-term.
Okay, so why do you think brands need to start thinking about this peer-to-peer commerce? Why does it matter to them? Or why should it matter to them?
Yeah, so we're talking to a lot of different brands out there that vary from small brands with franchise models to really large brands like you mentioned with Cisco and Intel and many others. And what we're finding from them is that there's a disconnect from their customers, but more importantly, their customers are demanding more personalization and greater access to things from each other. They don't want to be spoken to by the brand. They want to be empowered by the brand. And so what the brands are finding is that they want to have a more enriched community that they're not able to achieve on Facebook or Twitter or any social channel, and just have bigger and better content is really what they're looking for from a marketplace. And by empowering your customers to do this, it actually doesn't cannibalize their sales. It actually deepens the engagement and the relationship amongst the customers to gain access to things that they want. Whether it's a service of some sort, I'm working on a project and I need a designer or a developer to help me finish that project, or swapping of an exchange of secondhand clothing that I can then use those credits to buy brand new from the brands. The analytics that you can sort of gather from this is really powerful, where you're involving a customer in the full life cycle and closing that loop, and then being able to better understand, what are our customers buying and selling secondhand? What are they talking about? What are they microblogging about? And really what you're doing is giving them the tools to do that, and to empower their own network and their own community versus the brand just speaking to an audience of millions of users on Facebook through something else like a tool or a tip or anything else that they might connect with them on social media for.
Okay, so what would be some high-level benefits for a brand to get involved with peer-to-peer marketplaces?
So for us, what we're focused on powering is very trustworthy, engaged marketplaces. So some of the value that you can see from that in building that peer-to-peer trust is, obviously there's things like a revenue stream, being able to see a clip of that revenue and that transaction. But most of the marketplaces that we're powering for brands are much more data-driven and considered, focused on the loyalty of the brand, the loyalty of the community, being able to power that through an all-in-one solution is extremely powerful. And then seeing predictive analytics is a big focus of ours right now, where brands can understand better about the customer's life cycle, what trends are, seasonalities, how peers are behaving with each other, and that analytical data in a marketplace is really powerful.
Interesting. So how would a marketplace benefit a customer? So we talked about the brand, but what are some benefits for a customer if a brand were to get involved in that space?
Well, with the example of, let's just take an example like retail. We're seeing that as a really big market where, I'm very interested as a customer in buying something brand new, but there are certain things that make more sense in my lifestyle to buy secondhand or used, and being able to buy that in a trusted area where I know I'm going to still get a quality of a product is really powerful. So I might buy a brand new phone from Verizon, but then for my child who's going to grow out of their phone and needs something temporarily, I might buy that used. And being able to do that in the brand and understand who I am as a customer and offer that is really what our brands are looking for. It's the closed loop customer retention, and marketplaces are enabling that.
So what do you think that the brand element adds a trustworthy portion to the marketplace? You mentioned Verizon, and we can think of Movie Star and some other large telephone companies. Like, if they were to back it, is there a level of trust or reliability you think that there is for the customer versus someone else creating a marketplace?
Definitely. I think the loyalty of the brand is really powerful, as opposed to sort of what's happened on eBay, where eBay's been around for quite a long time now, and you'll see that a seller can have a 95% success rate or high rating, but that's actually considered fairly negative because of the amount of items or interactions they've had that have sold. What's balancing that out on the other end is potentially hundreds of negative reviews. So the trust within the brand is really powerful on what you can do with your customers from that perspective. We're actually really focused on building out a trust credit score, is what we call it here. And because we'll be powering, and we have all of this data, and we're powering it, we're interested in making sure that as a customer, I can take my user profile and go from marketplace to marketplace. So that credit score or trust API that we're focused on, I think in the longer run is really going to make a difference. I might be a really bad driver on a platform like Uber, and that's okay, but I might be able to log on to a platform with Intel and be a phenomenal developer and be able to give great advice and have a successful experience on an Intel platform. Maybe I don't have as much of a successful experience being a driver on Uber. So having that credit score, that trust score follow is really powerful for the long term of how we see the collaborative economy growing, and being able to weed out the folks that are, all of the negativity in a marketplace.
Definitely. So we have a Twitter question that came through. It's, what would it look like in practical terms for brands to be involved in peer-to-peer marketplaces, and how would it change the value of their brand and relationship with their customers? So maybe if you have an example, more practical, what would that look like? If you can walk us through the experience, maybe?
Sure. So one of our customers, just to give an example, Cisco is a large brand that we power a secondhand marketplace for all of their actual goods, like their routers and their switches, and all of their items. And what they look to us to do is provide a valuable tool to give their existing customers who are resellers a way to sell secondhand. So we set them up, from a feature perspective, we're a very flexible platform. I won't get into too many features, but we enabled them with the tools and then handed off a dashboard for them to run and manage this marketplace where folks are reselling those items, and they are doing that across countries, and being able to track that via ratings and reviews to see the success of each transaction. So I'm happy to dive into more specifics around how that looks and what that looks like, but we are a platform that does everything from the design all the way through to the implementation.
Okay, so our next Twitter question on that note is, how local, regional, national, or international would these peer-to-peer marketplaces be? Are we looking at, is this just a US thing, or how big is this, or how big can it be? So how small?
Yeah, this is definitely not a trend. It's something that's continued to grow year over year, and right now the value of these peer-to-peer rental marketplaces, just rental alone, is estimated at a little over $25 billion. To us, the value of consumers and the ability for them to engage and deepen these communities is valued over trillions. And any brand with a loyal following in a community can actually drop in a marketplace, whether it's a services-based marketplace like you might see with a TaskRabbit or Ask for Task, anything that you're renting of a service type, whether it's beauty, fitness, those types, or a buy-sell, which is reselling, renting, those types of things. It's a global movement. We actually see about, of all of our inbound traffic, we see about 35% of them coming from Europe and overseas. We currently power marketplaces in New Zealand, Australia, Europe, Canada, and we've talked to nearly a little over 50 countries. But to answer your question about it being hyper-local versus global, That's really up to the entrepreneur or the brand. We do have folks that are really focused on doing, RV camper sharing in just Canada, and we have folks that like larger that want to tackle a bigger part of the world. We try to recommend a strategy on how to launch, but it's possible to start a micro marketplace as well as a larger.
So 2 questions on what you were discussing.
Yeah.
One is you also mentioned entrepreneurs, so there is an option for entrepreneurs who are looking to build marketplaces. And the second question is, how do you deal with payments with these international marketplaces? What does that look like for you guys if somebody is creating a marketplace in France? And how do you accommodate payments, and what does that look like?
Can you repeat the first one? I'll go through the first one.
Yes, the first one I mentioned is you mentioned entrepreneurs, and so does that mean that there is an opportunity for entrepreneurs to also create marketplaces?
Yes, definitely. We service both. We focused early on the entrepreneurs, and then found that brands were really excited and interested in engaging further and wanted to join this. So we do work with both. We have sales teams that focus on both.
Okay, and then the second question was about payments, international marketplaces. How do you deal with that? What do you have? How do you address those needs if somebody creates a marketplace in France and payment gateways? What does that look like for you?
Sure. So that's been a big focus from a product development perspective. We've focused this year and tackled about 60 payment gateways, whether it's PayPal, Stripe, Braintree. There's a section on our site that will actually list a number of those, and so we can focus on payments in about 60 countries right now. It's been
Do you think that brands find that valuable and trustworthy, knowing that there are some credible companies that you are working with, like you mentioned, PayPal, Balance, and whatnot?
Definitely. I mean, we've chosen the top payment providers that focus on chain link payments, which is how the payments are paid out. There's a lot of detail around that, how the transactions happen, how the payouts happen, what triggers them, who sets the price. And so we chose some of the best payment providers that could handle that, which are folks like PayPal, Stripe, Balanced. But we've gone into specific countries and worked with payment gateways specific to New Zealand or Australia and those types to make sure we could service them as well.
Okay, so what industries do you think should be considering marketplaces? What would you say has been the most popular, but what are some areas that haven't been tapped into yet?
Well, typically I think what we've seen is folks that have, expensive, underutilized assets, and the people we speak to are definitely domain experts or leaders in that industry. So retail is a really big space for us. We've transportation, so whether it's car sharing in India or another part of the world, as well as bicycles, bike cages, which are like lockers, RVs, campers. Transportation has been big. Housing. So spin-offs of Airbnb that are more around services or tourism. We've seen everything from folks that have one particular one that stands out is an individual that was sort of the go-to person for brokering refurbished nuclear power plant parts, and he worked off of email and a spreadsheet before he found our software. So enabling him to have all of his inventory up in a central location to be able to have a buy-sell on gently used or refurbished nuclear power plant parts. So we do work with a lot of traditional businesses, but I'd say the biggest industry for us has been fashion, retail, transportation, housing, a few of those as well. Boats.
You mentioned Cisco and Intel earlier. So when it comes to the brands, what type of industries have you heard from most being interested in this? Sounds like these are some tech companies. Do you think that how do these tech companies look at a marketplace? What are some benefits? Is it all goods or are there services also included?
It's been a combination of goods and services. From the retail perspective, we're working with one that's all around electronics, and that was they saw a need in the market where people were doing this in the black market, buying and selling, and then coming to them and maybe buying a phone plan. And so this is a way to upsell opportunity and to engage with that customer early on with a used good. But from a service perspective, we launched a Cisco marketplace this year that is all around becoming Cisco certified globally. So there was no real way to track and find classes virtually and in person to go and book and find and search to become Cisco certified in a number of areas. So it's been an even split amongst both, I'd say.
Okay, we have some questions that are coming through. This one question is kind of related. Somebody was worried about a negative review on Airbnb and how it would affect them in other platforms. And then also, could a trust score that follows you forever exclude you from participating in the sharing economy at some point?
Sure.
So I guess we're looking at reputation.
Right, definitely. I think that's the most important part for these marketplaces to thrive and be successful, and to hold people accountable as it is peer-to-peer. So as far as Airbnb goes, once we open up our Trust API this next year, it will be to be determined if Airbnb decides to tap into that, to have some crossover. If you had a negative review, that would be, I think, a great situation because they've been a catalyst in this industry. But more importantly, I think the biggest question is accountability and trust is what's going to make these thrive and make these marketplaces more successful than what we've seen with Craigslist and eBay. And so if there are negative reviews, each of our marketplace owners has a sort of system to be able to handle that, and they can make that individual decision if they want to kick that person off, mark that review, or how they want to handle that. So it's basically a dispute resolution system that we encourage our marketplace owners to handle and to put in place. So I think if you have negative reviews, through a different process.
Okay, and so part of that question is there no way for you to reset your score? So if you've accumulated a negative score for some reason, would you be able to, positively affect your reputation?
Right. In theory, no. We haven't really gotten that far in the sense of do we want to open up the platform to provide the marketplace owner the ability to sort of erase that or screen that, and as we go through a beta test with our marketplaces and our trust reputation system, it's definitely something we'll be considering to whether or not we give them the tools to do that. But I think more importantly, the point of the score, just like we have a credit score that enables us to buy credit, rent a house, or buy a house, buy a car, those types of things. They're not easily they don't easily go away. So that would be what we'd be leaning towards.
So do you think that there is a level of trust context, maybe that you're, like you mentioned earlier, where somebody may not be a trusted Uber driver, but they would be a great developer on an Intel platform because that's where they thrive. So do you believe that somebody can be trusted in one marketplace and be seen as an expert, whereas in another it may not be as applicable, and is there a management of that?
I definitely do, yeah. We'd like the individuals to be able to manage their own score and their own data, and I think folks are demanding that now in these large platforms like Uber and Lyft, and they want to be able to manage that now. Yelp's a great example of that, where the individual business owners can manage that. TripAdvisor is a great example where individual business owners can manage those reviews, but the reviews are there, they're transparent. So I think that you can still be a successful user in this sharing economy and peer-to-peer commerce, and and maybe you're not the next best Lyft driver, but you're really great at giving business advice or accounting advice in some other type of marketplace.
Okay, so in some ways, your reputation might not be gone forever. You know, you can always find a marketplace that fits, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. I think.
Okay, and I'm reading these questions as they come through. So exciting. The next one is the sharing economy. Is it really about sharing, and is it about individuals becoming micro-capitalists? So that's a very popular question, and I think here, as we talk about peer-to-peer commerce specifically, I think you might have some good things to say about what it's all about.
Right. I think, you know, I actually believe it's a combination. I think that, you know, we're definitely talking about two different folks, the entrepreneur and the already built large brand. And we're empowering and giving entrepreneurs tools. Our main focus has been to expedite the process to build a marketplace. So giving them the tools that they would have otherwise had to spend, you know, a lot of money and a lot of time building from scratch, and seeing that those are the most successful. As far as you know, in some level, I think there is a bit of microcapitalism happening, but on the other hand, we see a lot of platforms actually that are using different levels of currency. So they're taking the traditional monetary exchange out of it, and they're actually plugging in things that are more point-based or swapping-based, like you see with startups like Yurtle and a few others. So getting back to the roots of true sharing and having different value on currency is really important.
Okay.
But I think ultimately, like, there's a cost of labor associated to a lot of these platforms, especially as we see more folks become freelancers in the world. And typically, labor is like a crucial aspect of capitalism. So I think it's kind of a combination of both.
Okay. So what are some risks for a brand not getting involved in peer-to-peer? What is that going to look like in the future, in the next year, 6 months? What are some risks if they don't get involved?
Well, I think what we'll start to see is just the early adopters to allowing a marketplace and having that happen. We'll see positive results, whether it's in stronger communities, more loyalty in the brands, being able to tell the story from the customer's perspective is extremely powerful. So I think the risk of not being an early adopter is to be a follower, and that puts you in a different position in your industry, whatever industry that might be. So when we talk to companies that are leaders like Cisco, Patagonia, Intel, those folks have, you know, massive innovation departments that are constantly forward-thinking on what's next. So I think the risk is to fall behind a bit and become a follower and not a standout in what they can do with their customers, and really, you know, not serving the needs of the millennials. They're a big participant in the sharing economy, and most brands are trying to figure out how to serve them. And this is definitely one of the main resources that brands can deploy on how to service that customer base.
Okay. So you talked about some examples of brand and marketplaces and what Near Me is doing. Are there any other examples that you wanted to highlight that are happening, that are being built right now, that are some to look out for?
Yeah, you know, we've spoken to probably, I'd say, almost 4,000 folks that vary from entrepreneurs to brands since February of this year. So we've gathered a lot of data, had a lot of engaging conversations, and seen a lot of trends. You know, just some other examples are, you know, high value equipment, like outdoor equipment, sporting equipment. We have some folks deploying marketplaces there. fishing expeditions, fishing trips specific in a country. We have luxury item marketplaces like boats or high-end fashion. We have bikes, bike cages, dog walking services, and dog babysitting services. We have quite a few marketplaces around RVs and campers, or the locations for RVs and campers. There's a big list. I could go on. So hopefully I've given enough examples, but I'm happy to share more.
So I know we're closing up soon, so I would ask, how can people learn more about this? Are there any resources or what's coming up in the future with Near Me so people can learn more about this?
Sure. Well, if anyone is going to be at the Web Summit in Dublin, we'll be exhibiting there, we're attending, and I'll be speaking there. So that's a great place to meet in person. We're based in San Francisco, obviously online, and we'll be launching very soon a Near Me Academy, which I'm really excited about. This will be a great place for us to talk to our customers or potential customers or folks that want to learn more about what we're doing, where we'll host more webinars. We actually have a webinar coming up next week, I believe, Angela?
Yes, we have a webinar November 12th, I believe.
Yeah, so we're starting to really increase the educational side of what we do and to the community, and so of course following us on Twitter, checking back when our academy launches, signing up for our newsletter. There are many ways to get in touch.
Okay, and so this is directly related to our last question, which is what would be your top tip for someone interested in getting involved as an entrepreneur in the sharing economy?
If you're early, entry level, just starting out, I would definitely think one mistake entrepreneurs make is they think they have this sacred, awesome idea, and they likely do, but they like to keep it to themselves. And I think the best thing to do is to do your own focus groups. If you're just starting out, talk to people, tell them your idea, have them rip it apart, find out what's good about it, what's bad about it, and really assess the market of what you're trying to accomplish. That's one, I think, mistake that can be avoided, definitely, is to analyze that. And then also looking at this from a business perspective. You know, we do see a lot of folks that come to us as a hobby, and I think that assessing the value of a business, it takes any business a year at least to get off the ground. And so really understanding what that year looks like. Tools like what we have, and there's a lot of other tools that can help expedite that whole process of going to market. But I think understanding that this is adjusting your forecast to at least a year or longer. We've talked to entrepreneurs that say, oh, I'm going to give this a shot for 6 months. And, marketplace businesses are some of the hardest to start. They really are. Just building up the supply and building up the demand and doing it, twice is really challenging. So just making sure to assess the market.
You talked about it a little bit, but it sounds like because of the community element of a peer-to-peer marketplace, that's why it's a little bit harder. So giving yourself that time maybe to build that community is important for an entrepreneur.
It is, yeah. It's really important.
Just one thing to add about that question is our webinar November 12th is titled How to Validate Your Marketplace. So if you are thinking about creating a marketplace or you have already gotten started, that webinar will be very, very helpful. And there's information on our Twitter, which is Near Me Co, or on Facebook, which is Near Me Co as well. But there's definitely opportunity there to grow and learn, and other webinars and other white papers that we have that we've posted and shared. And then again, look out for the Near Me Academy, because like Michelle said, that would have some great information for entrepreneurs and brands to check out. Michelle, is there anything you wanted to add before we close up? I know we're a few minutes over, but if there's anything you want to say now?
No, I just wanted to say thanks to everyone that tuned in, and great questions. And I'm happy to continue the conversation with anyone that's interested, and also learn from others out there that have are living and a part of the sharing economy. We're always excited to hear from those types of folks too. So feel free to reach out anytime. But thanks so much for having me.
I'd love to ask one more question, if
Sure.
that's possible. Is that okay, Angela?
Yeah, go for it.
Awesome. Am I loud? Yeah. Um, can I just ask, like, what is the short-term future for Near Me? I mean, how big do you think you'll be in the next 6 to 12 months, and and maybe more importantly, how do you measure the success of Near Me?
Sure. Well, we're definitely growing. We're in a really big growth mode. Just closing a round of funding here, and continuing to hire and potentially even open up an office in Europe because we have such a big interest there. But we're measuring our success really off of the success of these marketplaces, which is why education and what we're learning from our companies that are using our platform is really important to us. So our success really rides on the success of the marketplaces. So we measure them not just from the deployment, but also from the user base and how they grow, and plan to continue to do a lot of work around helping these businesses grow. So there's a bit of a services angle that we provide that helps to get these marketplaces off the ground, and how do you take your millions of users and educate them or move them into a platform. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks.
Are you happy with that, Angela? Any last?
Oh yeah, I think yeah, we're definitely growing fast and we're excited. And like she mentioned, I mean, we're working with entrepreneurs and brands all over the world. And I think what's really helpful is that we want to be that resource. Some brands come to us and they don't even know what they want to do, but they know they want to get involved in peer-to-peer. And so we provide some strategic direction and resources so that they can dive into this space appropriately and successfully. And so there's a lot of opportunity here. So we're growing and we're excited.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank both of you for joining us this evening. I know that you're out in San Francisco, so there's a lot of things to do. So we really appreciate spending the time with us this evening, or morning or afternoon, depending where you are. So we're hoping, obviously, to audience members, I just want to signpost a couple of events that are happening over the next couple of days. On Wednesday, tomorrow, Christ, it's tomorrow, we have guys from the Perpetual Plastics and Better Future Factory doing a session titled "A Design Crash Course on How to Solve the Plastic Waste Problem," and I think that's a pretty big problem, so it'd be cool to see what they've got. For us, it's a very interactive session. And then, of course, on Thursday, we have our next headliner, which is the futurist Jeremy Rifkin talking about the next industrial revolution. So that's at 5 o'clock on Thursday. So do tune in for these and continue taking part in the Disruptive Innovation Festival. Thanks once again to Michelle and Angela for a fascinating session here on what Near Me is doing and some of the ideas around peer-to-peer marketplaces. I think it's a space to watch out for. And please continue tuning into the festival. Thanks, guys.
Great.
Thanks again.